And we'll get started. So, thank you for those joining and for those listening to the recording or catching the replay. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I am coming to you and I'm so honored to live, work, and enjoy this beautiful space of the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. And I've been luckily enough to live here for 20 plus years now. Before we begin, I invite you to just take a moment, and if you're in a place that you can do so, to close your eyes and just settle into your space. It's been a busy day. It's been a busy, back to Monday. And just invite some gratitude for taking this time for yourself to support your own mental health. So imagine taking a breath right down into your belly. And as you breathe out, releasing anything that is not serving you at this point. So anything that is kind of left over from your day or thoughts that are trying to get you organized for tomorrow, those are things that can happen later on. Right now is this time for you. So you can imagine drawing from the bottom of your feet some grounding energy all the way up past your knees and past your hips, and drawing it all the way up into your heart. This is relaxation, release, and connection time for yourself. So, and I always lose track of where the little buttons are. So yes, really taking in some gratitude to release the day and breathe into this present moment. So many times our brains are kind of caught up in either regrets from the past or worry about the future. And this is your time to just be here, and there's nowhere else you need to be. And you can use this intention setting or think of one of your own, but I wrote this one out. I am choosing to use this time today to cultivate more calm and connection in my life. And this is my intention for this workshop, is to help bring a little sense of grounding and connection, because I find more and more so that we are kind of disconnected as people, as moms. So this is what I work on. I'll share a little bit about myself, first of all. Some people who are joining later, I know they've met me before, but those of you who are new to me, I'm Shannon. I am an advanced EFT practitioner. EFT is also known as emotional freedom technique or tapping. I am a Reiki practitioner and a numerologist. I'm also a sober mom, and I am an ally for my queer teen as well as everyone. So I will say something a little controversial here, that 2020, when I look back at it, was actually one of the best years of my life, because of the way that lockdown forced me to get honest about my own anxiety. And it gave me that space, because there was nothing else to do, to really seek out practices that would support me. So it helped me anchor into my sobriety. When lockdown first happened in March 2020, I was like maybe 6 months sober. And so it really anchored for me how important that was to me. And it helped me create a safe place for my kids and their big feelings. I have a 6-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they both went through some pretty big stuff during that time. So I learned how to really connect into my own self-beliefs, and this created a secure foundation for me and my family. So I can't remember how I ordered this. Hang on a second. Okay, there we go. Thinking back to 2020, if you think about what the big feelings that you were experiencing during the first initial wave, did you notice yourself like having to shut off certain news sources or to shut off certain people? And did you notice yourself shutting down emotionally? I know for myself, and my parents live downstairs, there were times that I was like, okay, we need to just stop having the news on because there's too much that was bringing up a lot of stressful things for my kids and myself. The problem with shutting off feelings is that we can't do this selectively. So if something that becomes a habit for us, when it's like, okay, that's too much, I'm just not going to feel that, or I'm not going to think that. The problem is when you try to shut off the negative emotions like mad or sad, it also shuts off the full experience of the positive emotions like joy and happiness and peace. And so you end up just being kind of flat all the time. Today's news may be causing you to want to numb because it's just, it feels to me that there's just new things happening every day, that women's rights are under attack, along with the rights of people in the LGBTQ two-spirit plus community. There's wars happening. I know there's children listening, so I won't go into everything, but I know we all have our own impressions of this sensation from global events that things are going downhill faster than ever, and there is a disconnect, a feeling of like othering people a lot, and a loss of security. So thoughts like this, if you're running these through your head all the time, can really set your mind into this fight, flight, or freeze. So you're feeling disconnected from others, you're avoiding your feelings, and you're not actually sharing what's happening. And that overwhelm will increase. So what I want to introduce to you, because when you are in that feeling of fight, flight, or freeze, you're not really making clear-headed decisions. You may not be making decisions at all. You're just kind of dull. So I'm going to show you some EFT tonight. We're going to run through a session. And this is something that I picked up during lockdown. And it was something that I was able to use for myself. I didn't need to go to someone's office and deal with this. I was able to follow videos online and release the pressure that I was feeling. So as it says here, it's a form of energy psychology that combines Eastern medicine, like the acupressure or acupuncture points that you would use. You're tapping on them to create that connection between your mind and your body. And at the same time, you're voicing your thoughts out loud. And quite honestly, for a lot of us, that is something we don't do very often. If someone asks you how you're feeling, the typical response is, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And If you don't have a safe place or a safe person that you can actually say, well, no, things aren't fine, I'm having these feelings, then there's that numbing sensation again. So what happens in your body when you're tapping, I'm going to see if I can move my little thing over here. There. Within your body, it helps to soothe the sympathetic nervous system so that you can help to shift into that restful state. Because if you imagine, as you have these stressful thoughts going through your head all the time, that's increasing the cortisol. That's the stress hormone that is telling you, like, you're in danger, stay alert, stay ready, and yet never actually giving you a time to like do stuff. You're just like on alert. So once you can soothe that part of the brain, the amygdala, you're able to kind of take a breath, release that grip that you have on the emotions in your body, and to begin choosing again. And so tapping helps you to observe your thoughts and assess them in a detached way. It's kind of like you're stepping outside of your thoughts and learning how to look at them in a non-judgmental way. Instead of like, ooh, you shouldn't be thinking that. It's like, oh, there it is. I wonder why that's coming up. So it helps you, once you're out of that stressed phase or stressed response, you're able to start making clear, more rational decisions. So yes. Sorry, I forgot what I put in my notes here. Happening in your mind, there's all different things happening. So something to remember is that your brain, from day to day, like in one day, you are having about 70,000 thoughts in a day. And there's a couple problems with that. For one thing, a lot of those thoughts are old thoughts. They're repeat thoughts from the day before and the day before that. And the other problem with this is that a lot of these thoughts are actually negative. So they're judging yourself, they're keeping you in check. And as it says, the subconscious is trying to protect you from trying anything different because it wants you to stay safe. That's the fight, flight, or freeze again. So as you tap and talk and voice these thoughts out loud, just letting someone in here. It helps to point out some of these unconscious patterns and thoughts that you've been holding. These may be limiting beliefs. And as you begin to step outside of the thought and notice it, you'll be able to actually choose something new. So you're getting conscious about these unconscious thoughts and beginning to choose again. As it says, it also helps to connect with old memories that, oh, I understand. I think that way because this happened to me in the past. And that memory taught me that this will always happen. So again, teaching yourself to look at that and recognize whether that's a true thing or not. Hi, Nancy. Thanks for joining. And then within your soul, when you're tapping, maybe I can move this up here sometimes if I move it around. It helps to move you out of survival mode. So instead of just getting through the day and, getting to the point where you get to go to bed again, this helps you to realize that you are thriving and that you are in control of your choices. It helps you to listen to your heart and choose for yourself and choose what feels good. And it really creates a new perspective for you so that you can not only have that empathy for yourself, but recognize what other people are experiencing. and change relationships this way. So tapping has brought a lot of changes to the way that I communicate within my family and my community and, well, everywhere, basically. So today we're going to start with, and Nancy's tapped with me, so she knows, but there's 3 phases with tapping. So we'll start with the first phase, and basically what I do is just check in and bring up some questions, and then we'll do the first round. And it really is like watch and copy, or Simon Says, that I will say a phrase while tapping on a point, and I will guide you through that. And then you say it back. So you don't have to think up great things to say right now. You can just follow along. If there's a point that I say a phrase and you're like, no, that's not the feeling, like I feel stressed, I don't feel anxious, like feel free to change the language for yourself. But and Jessica, I know you've got your daughters there, like for them, even just watching the tapping and observing it, that in itself is a form of stress release, because the mirror neurons in your brain will like, ooh, that feels good, and that will help to soothe things. So first of all, the first round, I will admit, venting sometimes feels like the hardest round, because you're saying stuff. Oh, I bet the older one will join you, Jessica. It happens a lot when I tap with kids in the room. And I do tap with my 6-year-old. So it was a really powerful tool that came in for both of us. So venting is literally saying the things that you've been holding on to. And as I said before, and we do this as women, we do this as moms, that we don't always say the true feelings that we're feeling, because we don't want to disrupt people. We don't want people to judge our feelings. But this is a safe place to do this. So today, thinking about releasing these stresses and anxieties about current situations, when you think about what's happening in the news, and you can pop this in the chat, whether that's local or international, what feelings come up for you? So first of all, noticing the feelings, and I say rate and locate, because you want to notice how strong those feelings are on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 is like, I can't think anything else but this feeling. And 1 is like, yeah, it's pretty much gone. And also, where do you notice the feeling? And this is a big part of emotional literacy, is learning how your body feels a feeling. I was talking to someone just last week who was like, she could not differentiate between happiness and some negative feelings. Like she really was feeling that disconnected from her body, that she's like, I think I know how I feel when I feel happy, but I'm getting it mixed up with these other feelings as well. And this is the thing, that we've just tuned out our feelings so much. So for me, when I think about the news, things like fear come up, and frustration or anger, because people are making choices that I don't necessarily agree on. And so how do those feel? Sorry, my notes are a little bit. How do those feel in the body? And where do I feel them in my body? Sometimes you feel them in your chest or tension in the neck or sick to your stomach, anything like that. So thinking about stressful things in the news that may be making you feel like you don't want to tune into your emotions about it. And I'll just take a moment. And if there's nothing to share, that's okay. We can just tap through the first round. So I'm trying to use a microphone so that I can use this as a podcast later. So I'll try not to knock the microphone. Oh, tiring. Yeah, exactly, Nancy. That was one I didn't think of. Probably because I was feeling mad. So what we'll do now is start with our first round. So I invite you to just get comfortable in your seat. And again, breathe into your belly, just come into this present moment. I always like to take a few breaths to just re-anchor into this space. So what we start with is tapping on the side of the hand, and we'll repeat 3 phrases at this point. We call these the setup phrase. So even though the news in the world makes me feel overwhelmed, I still love and accept myself completely. Even though when I read what's happening, it makes me tired and angry. I am focusing on taking care of myself because I love and accept myself completely. Sorry, just moving that off the screen. Even though when I think about what's happening in the world, a lot of big feelings come up. Right here, I am safe. And I am choosing to love myself completely. Okay, now we're going to move to the top of the head and just continuing to echo what I'm saying. All of this fear and anger, eyebrow point, the overwhelming tiredness, and beside the eyes, I can feel it in my body. Under the eyes, it feels hard to think about anything else. Under the nose, I get angry about decisions people are making. Under the mouth, and I feel powerless. Collarbone point. I want to shut things off and go hide. And then under the arms, so just like where your bra strap be, basically. All of these feelings of frustration. Under the chest, like the bottom of your rib cage. I thank my body for holding these for me. And then wrists together. And I'm getting ready to find some way to release them today. Okay, and just take a pause there. And just notice if any thoughts popped into your mind or any sensations. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the round that you may feel actual physical sensations doing this, whether it's your first time or like a continuous practice, that your body is responding. And if these are feelings that you've been carrying a long time, there may be some strong sensations of like tingling or yawning is a big one. Even burping sometimes is a funny one, because if you imagine like that tension that your body has been holding, as you speak the feelings, it's like, whew, all right, I can let that go. I can soften that. I can loosen my grip, and you will feel these feelings. So noticing if any of those came up for you, and you can pop that in the chat. And also checking again with the intensity. Did the feelings go up? The feeling of overwhelm and tiredness or anger, or did it release a bit? I will note that sometimes when you're venting, things actually intensify because your body's like, yeah, I am really angry, and it'll bring it up a little bit more. So that's okay too. You're not going to break yourself by tapping. It's just all about getting curious and getting comfortable just being with your feelings. So I'm normally not so dry-throated, but oh well. So the second round of tapping, I call it the curiosity phase, because now you've kind of gotten these thoughts out in the open. It's the time to start asking questions and getting curious about whether these thoughts that you've been thinking are true. So looking at these sensations of like needing to hide and feeling powerless, the question I have for you is to think back to your own childhood. And was there a time when you felt scared or isolated? Like things were too much for you to handle, and then someone helped you? And if you can think of a time like that, and I know that was a big question, so take a moment, but if you can think of that time that you were like, this is too much for me to handle, and I want to hide from it, and then someone stepped in and said, let me help you, how did it feel to realize that you didn't have to do it by yourself? Because that's what we're working on tonight, is that sensation of opening up to support, basically, that we even when there are hard things happening in our community, that we can talk about it and communicate. And that's okay if you don't have a memory like that. You could imagine it, but thinking maybe there was a time that you wished you had someone to help you with that support. What would it feel like to have that support now? Yeah. Hang on. So again, with these thoughts that were coming up in the first round of tapping, like, oh, this is too much, I can't handle this. Checking in to see if those thoughts are true. Do you have proof that you need to manage everything on your own? Or do we have community that we can draw from instead? And so looking at those thoughts, that's what we're going to tap on. Again, well, not again, because I think I forgot to mention it. Um, Tapping is not forcing new feelings. Yeah, nowadays it feels like relief, sometimes connection. Thanks, Nancy. Um, so something that I really try to steer away from is the idea of like spiritual bypassing with this kind of work, like, oh, just practice affirmations. And if you think good things, then good things happen. Well, we have these feelings, and to tell your body, like, oh, you're not sad, you're happy, that's spiritual bypassing. And that will continue to lock those negative, I don't like calling feelings negative or positive, but kind of the heavier energy feelings back into your body, because you're not giving your body permission to feel them. So right now we're not saying, okay, time to switch. We're just looking at whether it's possible. And quite honestly, there are times that, you start tapping and the feeling is at a 10. And even after a few rounds, we're at a 8.5 or a 9. Like, it's just coming down. It's not likely that every time you tap, if you're starting at a really intense feeling, you're going to just move all the way through every time. That's unreasonable. But we're just creating those new pathways in your brain, new neural pathways to think like, okay, maybe when I read a new article in the news, I don't have to automatically think, everything's hopeless. Maybe I can start thinking, who could I talk to about this? Right? And that's not saying, oh, I can support everything. It's just looking for that new possibility. So we're going to start our second round of tapping. These things are tricky because I talk so much. So starting on the side of the hand again, and just repeating back to me. Even though world events make me feel overwhelmed, I'm ready to consider that I'm not doing this alone. And I love and accept all parts of me. Even though the news piles up and makes me feel isolated, I also see that there are others I can reach out to. And I'm getting ready to take care of my needs. Even though it can be scary to see the different opinions in the world, and I don't like disagreements, I am ready to start practicing standing in my own beliefs, especially because I love and accept all parts of me. Okay, so we'll start again at the top of the head. Maybe I don't have to do this all by myself. Eyebrow point. I wonder how it would feel to share my fears. Side of the eye, instead of keeping them all to myself. Under the eyes. Maybe there's some healing here. Under the nose. Maybe there's space for more community. Under the mouth. How would it feel in my body to admit I could use some support? collarbone point. I'm betting I'm not the only one. Under the arms. I'm curious if I can feel brave enough. Under the chest. What's the worst that could happen if I shared my feelings? Wrist point. Other people might think I'm weird or weak. Top of the head, but maybe they're not the people I care about anyways. Eyebrow point. I have these big feelings because I care. Side of the eye. And I deserve to make some space to release this pressure. Under the eyes. I'm ready to start bringing some healing here. Under the nose. And I'm ready to start building my community. Okay. So we'll take a pause there again. So hopefully from there, there's been some release again. And as we get ready for the third round, this is when we start to, again, acknowledge the old feelings. And rather than just like, okay, goodbye, overwhelm, when you make that space, it's like the law of vacuum. You have to bring something else in so that you don't just kind of bring in some more overwhelm. So choosing with intention, like I release this and I choose to bring in this instead. And again, it doesn't have to be like I'm releasing overwhelm so that I can feel like joyful or like the high energy emotions. It could be I'm literally choosing not to think about this overwhelm. I'm releasing it so that I can just feel peaceful, so that I can be calm, so that I can, move on and make calm, peaceful decisions for my family. So the big belief that we're working on releasing is that belief of having to carry it all on your own, that we have to kind of keep these fears quiet, and welcoming a new belief that you're part of a loving, supportive community. So as you consider that possibility, are there any new emotions that come up with that? So, I'll let you answer that for a moment, and we'll get ready to do one more round of tapping. I'm doing well at staying on time here today. So hopefully some of that overwhelm, frustration, fear has begun to recede and dissipate, and you can choose a new feeling to bring in. Nancy's saying it feels invigorating, heartening. I love heartening. That's a great word. I'll write that one down. And this is also the magic of tapping, is that when you say these words and then I say it back to you, and I'm going to write connection too, then your brain is like, yeah, that's my word. You're hearing your voice basically. So that's why it's great to get your own words in there. And for those of you who have learned how to, do your own tapping practice like Nancy has, that's when it really begins to happen, that you're like, okay, I can write out my thoughts and then I tap it out. And as I say it, then my body begins to just process these emotions so much faster, so it doesn't get stuck in the mud. So we'll go ahead and do our final round, and this is the integration round. So bringing in new affirmations and intentions for yourself. So starting one more time on the side of the hand and say, even though I started in overwhelm and anger about the news around the world, I am choosing to look for community, especially because I love and accept myself completely. Even though I was feeling alone and hopeless, I am beginning to feel supported and hopeful. Even though I was getting lost in my anger, I am getting ready to release it and serve with confident action. Okay, top of the head. I release the old beliefs. Eyebrow point. I don't have to carry everything on my own. Side of the eye. Those beliefs no longer serve me. Under the eyes. I'm ready to be part of a thriving, loving community. Under the nose. I'm building my own new connections. Under the mouth. I'm not waiting for rescue. Collarbone point. I am helping myself. Under the arms. And helping those who could use this service too. Under the chest. I acknowledge and thank my body for carrying all these feelings. Wrist point. And I release them with love. Top of the head. I make space for hope and connection. Eyebrow point. I am building heartening new beliefs. Side of the eye. As I transform my world around me. Under the eyes. And I am invigorated by my connections. Okay, just welcome those new thoughts and beliefs. And I will say I love doing these tappings in the evening because your brain has a whole lot to chew on right now. So tapping and then going to bed and letting your brain kind of process this in your sleep, you may wake up and have some new awarenesses and new thoughts that come up. You may even dream about them tonight. So just journaling is a great thing to be doing alongside of tapping, to just like, oh, I didn't even think about this. If memories come up over the next few days of like community or those moments that we were talking about earlier, that is your brain like, okay, here it is. Like I had to look through my files, but I found it. And it is bringing these things up in order to reassess. Basically, your brain is always trying to file things. So it'll bring it up like, okay, so do we still believe this or is it ready to go? um, that's my version of the brain in your head. So full moon, we just experienced a really powerful one, and it is a great time to be noticing blocks, noticing those negative thoughts, and anchoring new habits. Whether that's like having an affirmation somewhere on a mirror, like, I get to choose, I am transforming my world, I am helping myself, right? These little affirmations. And then every other part of the month, like the new moon cycle, that's the time to be that's like the beginning of divine timing. So choosing goals and setting intentions and creating those little mini goals. Like, if I want to get to this place, if I want to have these sensations in my household, these are the little steps that I will do to get there. And so using tapping is a great way to just keep kind of checking in with yourself to see how things are going. I think I have there's my last slide. So thank you, those of you joining and those catching the replay. I will say, if you found this helpful, please follow me. I have a free community on Facebook, the Supercharge Your Superpowers community. And I also have a membership. Well, yes, I'm on social media a lot, honestly, but mainly Facebook and TikTok these days. So you can find me there as the Shannon Kerr. And yes, I have a membership that brings in a weekly tapping that you can join live if you want, but the recording comes into the membership every week. And it's connected with daily journal prompts. So right now we are working through the Brene Brown book of The Gifts of Imperfections and tapping into those different guideposts, but having a different way to really connect into mothering yourself, basically taking care of your own mental health and having these tools to help support feeling good about yourself so that you can be more I don't want to say more positive, but just a more self-loving person who can demonstrate these skills to their kids, basically. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I don't know how to find links when I'm in here, but I will be emailing everybody. Let's put it that way. So thank you so much. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Nancy. And thank you, Jessica. So yes, thank you for joining. I feel like I had another little thing, but it was just about the full moon. So the best thing that I have learned from doing this work is to really be comfortable with my feelings. And as a mom, that is the greatest gift that I can give my kids, is not to have those labels on any of their feelings, but just to start living with them and rolling with them. And it's creating empathetic connections within our community. So that's my jam. So I will be sending more information about the membership if you want to learn more. And thank you again for joining. All right, I will stop the share and then stop the recording.